Hello, good evening, attorney. Good evening, classmates. I'm Narfez Bimambuay. So, before we proceed, I would like to review on the unintended consequences. So, there is the praeter intentionem, where injuries results to greater than what is intended. The aberratio ictus, or mistake in the blow, and error in personae, mistake in identity. So, mistake in identity intends to injure one person but actually inflicts it on another due to mistake in identity. Unlike in aberratio ictus, there are only two persons present here, the actual but unintended victim and the offender. The criminal liability of the offender is not affected unless the mistake in identity resulted to a crime different from what the offender intended to commit, in which case the lesser penalty between the crime intended and the crime committed shall be imposed, but in a maximum period. Cha! Okay, question number 11. A reunion was celebrated in the house of the Y. There seems to have been a liberal supply of alcoholic drinks, and some of the men present became intoxicated, with the result that a quarrel took the place between the Z and X. Z and his son, W, eventually left the house and were followed by U and 1V. X left the house about the same time with the intention of assaulting Z, but in the darkness of the evening and in the intoxicated condition of X, he mistook U for Z and inflicted on him a mortal wound with a bola. There can be no doubt that X killed U and that he is guilty of the crime charged. But can it be argued that, in view of the fact that X had no intention to kill U and commit the crime by mistake, he should have been found guilty of homicide through negligence only and not the graver crime of intentional homicide? People versus Ghana, 54 Phil 605 1930. So, in Article 4 on criminal liability shall be incurred by any person committing a felony delito, although the wrongful act done be different from that which he intended. So, the criminal liability of X is not affected by mistake in identity. X's intention was to assault. He acted maliciously and willfully. Where such unlawful act is willfully done, a mistake in the identity of the intended victim cannot be considered as reckless imprudence. People versus Ghana, 54 Phil 605. So we continue to types of relevant causation. So there is proximate cause and efficient intervening cause. So in proximate cause. Proximate cause has been defined as that which, in natural and continuous sequence, unbroken by any efficient intervening cause, produces the injury and without which the result would not have occurred. Dito yung el que es causa de la causa es causa del mal causado. He who is the cause of the cause is the cause of the evil cause. Now, in efficient intervening cause, an intervening cause to be considered efficient must be one not produced by a wrongful act or omission but independent of it and adequate to bring the injurious result. Any cause intervening between the first wrongful cause and the final injury, which might reasonably have been foreseen or anticipated by the original wrongdoer, is not such an efficient intervening cause as will relieve the original wrong of its character as proximate cause of the final injury. Madaling salita, an efficient intervening cause is one that destroys the causal connection between the negligent act and injury and thereby negatives liability. Question number 12. At about 2 o'clock in the morning, while a bus was running, one of the front tire burst and the vehicle began to zigzag until it fell into a canal or a ditch on the right side of the road and turned turtle. Some of the passengers managed to leave the bus the best way they could. Others had to be helped or pulled out, while the three passengers seated beside the driver, named X, Y, and Z, as well as a woman behind them, W, could not get out of the overturned bus. Some of the passengers, after they had clambered up to the road, heard groans and moans from the inside the bus, particularly shouts for help from X and Y, who said they could not get out of the bus. Nothing shows whether or not the passengers, already free from the wreck, including the driver and the conductor, made any attempt to pull out or extricate and rescue the four passengers trapped inside the vehicle. But calls or shouts for help were made to the houses in the neighborhood. After half an hour, came about 10 men, one of them carrying a lighted torch made of bamboo with wick on one end, evidently fueled with petroleum. These men presumably approached the overturned bus, and almost immediately a fierce fire started, burning all but consuming the bus, including the four passengers trapped inside it. It would appear that as the bus overturned, gasoline began to leak and escape the gasoline tank on the side of the chassis, spreading over the spreading over and permeating the body of the bus and the ground under and around it, and that the lighted torch brought by one of the men who answered the call for help set it on fire. Should the bus company be held liable for the death of W, X, Y, and Z? Vida de Pataclan et al. Versus Medina 102 Phil 181 1957. So to answer yes, the proximate cause was the overturning of the bus, the leaking of the gasoline, and the arrival of the man with torch should be expected by the driver and the conductor. It may be contended that if the bus was overturned and gas leaked, then bang! A lightning struck the gas and burned the passenger. The lightning was the efficient intervening cause. However, in this case, the driver and the conductor most likely knew that the gasoline would leak out when the bus overturned. They were probably the ones who initiated the call for help. It was dark and in a rural area. It was expected that the man who would respond will be carrying torch. The driver and conductor should have smelled the gasoline on the road. They should have prevented the man carrying the torch to get near the bus. Question number 13. On St. John's Day, a procession was held in the barrio of Canlurang Bayan, Balayan. It is characteristic of this feast to make the rounds of the town in procession with a roasted pig on a piece of cane, followed by music and the populace. The bear goes about daring to the tune of the music, and as it is customary, designed to enliven the celebration, the people would try to take a piece of the barbecued pig to direct the procession and prevent the people from consuming the whole animal before reaching the end. A man is placed in charge, who in the day of record, June 24, 1929, happened to be X. Y, a young man, delicate and suffering from incipient tuberculosis, made one of the gay multitudes and tried to secure a piece of the crackling. To punish his boldness, X ran after him, boxed him, and left him sprawling on the ground. Upon struck, Y suddenly became very ill, and his companion had to take him home in Koromata. This was in the morning, and about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, he expired. There was no fundamental disagreement among the medical witnesses as to the cause of the victim's death. The blow on the deceased's right hypochondrium, which bruised the liver and produced an internal hemorrhage, inflicted by X. Can X avoid criminal liability by arguing that Y would not have died from the blow he inflicted had it not been for the delicate constitution of Y, who suffered from incipient pulmonary tuberculosis? People versus Eluster, 1930. So to answer this, no, Y's delicate constitution does not affect the criminal liability of X. However, the circumstances that X had no intention of the cause of Y mitigates his guilt. So there is a praeter intentionem here, as you can see, which would mitigate the circumstances. Question number 14. Y, for a couple of weeks, had been living with X, but her parents had persuaded her to come home and were demanding that X pay a dowry of 30 pesos before the date of the celebration of their marriage could be fixed. During an impromptu dance that took place one evening, X and Y talked in the yard of the house where the dance was taking place. Y informed X that she could not return to him and that she was going with her parents at Catanduanes. X dragged Y towards the street and stabbed her in the chest with a fan knife. Y ran to the house of the barrio lieutenant a short distance away, falling dead at the foot of the staircase, although the wound was only a slight one, it not having penetrated the thoracic cavity, having hit a bone. Can X contend that the circumstances he cannot be convicted of homicide as the wound he actually inflicted was a superficial one of no intrinsic magnitude? People versus Reyes, 1935. So the answer is no. The wound X inflicted to Y is the proximate cause of the death of Y. We have repeatedly held that when a person stabs with a lethal weapon such as fan knife upon a part of the body, for example the head, chest, or stomach, death could reasonably be anticipated, and the accused must be presumed to have intended the natural consequences of his wrongful act. The means employed contradict the claim that the appellant had lacked the intention to commit a crime of homicide. People versus Reyes, 1935. Question number 15. When X went to his rice field, he found a place where he stored his palay flooded with water coming from the irrigation canal nearby, which had overflowed. X went to the elevated portion of the canal to see what happened, and there he saw Z and Y cutting grass. X asked them who was responsible for opening the irrigation canal, and Y admitted that he was the one. And then X got angry and demanded that Y pay for his soap palay. A quarrel between them ensued. X unsheathed his bolo, about 2 feet long, including the handle, by 2 inches wide, and hacked Y, hitting him on the right palm of his hand, which was used in parrying the bolo hack. Y, who was then unarmed, ran ran away from X, but was overtaken by X, who hacked him again, hitting Y on the left leg with the back portion of the said bolo, causing a swelling on the said leg. When X tried to hack and inflict further injury, his daughter embraced and prevented him from hacking Y. 22 days later, Y rushed to the hospital in a very serious condition. When admitted to the hospital, Y had lockjaw and was having convulsion. The attending physician found that Y's serious condition was caused by tetanus toxin. He noticed the presence of a healing wound in Y's palm, which could have been infected by tetanus. Y died thereafter. Can X be held liable for Y's death? Urbano versus the Intermediate Appellate Court, 1988. So the answer, no. The nature of tetanus, the incubation period of tetanus, the time between injury and appearance of unmistakable symptoms range from 2 to 56 days. However, over 80% of patients become symptomatic within 14 days. A short incubation period indicates severe disease, and when symptoms occur within 2 or 3 days of injury, the mortality rate approaches 100%. Mild tetanus is characterized by an incubation period of at least 14 days and an onset time of more than 6 days. At the time Y was wounded by X, the more severe form of tetanus that killed Y was most likely not present. Based on the nature of tetanus, Y was most likely inflicted with the severe form of tetanus 2 to 3 days before his death. There was an efficient intervening cause from the time the first injury was inflicted and until the final injury, death, which would thereby relieve X's assault of its character as the proximate cause of the final injury. Doubts are present. There are likelihood that the wound was but the remote cause of its subsequent infection, for failure to take necessary precaution. With tetanus may have been the proximate cause of Javier's death, there with which the petitioner had nothing to do. Urbano versus the Appellate Court, 1988. So with that, uh, kung may mga katanungan kayo, maaaring isulat nyo na lamang muna o tandaan nyo at itanong sa amin pagkatapos ng aming presentasyon. Hanggang dito na lamang at maraming salamat. With that, I end my turn.